You said last year that the reason people watch women's basketball isn't just because of one player, but because of you too. A year later, do you feel like you're the next one? The reporter didn't get to finish his question, but he didn't have to tell Ree that the WNBA's relationship with Caitlin Clark has taken a turn for the worse in just 2 words. Big turn. Let me explain. The WNBA has undoubtedly benefited from millions of new fans, sold-out arenas, and record-breaking viewership, but it is also undeniable that the league as a whole blew their golden opportunity. Rather than accepting the Caitlin Clark effect, many in the league threw caution to the wind, questioned the hype, minimized her influence, and, worst of all, made fun of her fans. The WNBA, bless their hearts, finally got a star last year, and they didn't realize that they couldn't figure it out. Well, we don't want to put too much Caitlin Clark on, but every game, more Caitlin Clark all the time, always. The Caitlin Clark effect is a threat, not a gift. And to anyone watching from the outside, it made no sense. Sports, since Michael Jordan's success, the mainstream breakthrough, the headlines, the hype, Fact Arena's it was everything the WNBA had hoped for decades. The players' moment, the cultural breakthrough, saw them on the verge of real money, respectable salaries, and international recognition. But the catch was that Caitlin Clark was leading the way. For many WNBA players, this wasn't a celebration, but rather a funeral, because for some of them, Caitlin's passing wasn't just a plot twist. It was the end of a dream that they would be the ones to elevate the league as a whole. It was also perhaps the hardest pill to swallow, to realize that, despite years of being told that fans didn't care about the women's game, they did show up for Caitlin. There are levels to this, and that's just life. Yes, Diana, there have been deaths, and we've witnessed players and the media go through what seem like phases of grief, denial, anger, and the works. Just wait until you see how everything comes together. It's crazy. In any case, it's been depressing, ugly, and a bad look for the WNBA. But the WNBA is now fully aware of what's coming next, and they're scrambling to get on the right side of history. Let's talk about what happened. But first, if you're ready, watch this video of the WNBA cave to Caitlin. Don't forget to subscribe. Let's go back a little. Yes, I'm not the only reason we watch women's basketball. I'm also the reason. I want you all to understand that by the end of the previous season, Caitlin Clark was already living rent-free in the minds of half of the WNBA, had not even arrived when she exploded, causing viewership to triple, NBA arenas to sell out, and jersey sales to skyrocket. Every Fever game became a must-see event, with fans waiting for hours to get tickets and scalpers charging playoff prices for regular season tickets. 4 assists and 6 rebounds is insane. But the envy began earlier. When Caitlin Clark put on a pair of professional sneakers, the excitement surrounding her was generational. She had just broken the NCAA scoring records for both men's and women's teams, led Iowa to consecutive national championship games, sold out every arena she touched, and dropped logo threes like layups. Then came the WNBA draft, which was a coronation with no surprises or suspense. The league had seen great players before: A'ja Wilson, Kelsey Plum, Breanna Stewart, legitimate stars, MVPs, champions, but none of them entered with this kind of hype. And for some, that stung and triggered the first stage of grief denial. It wasn't just skepticism, it was outright resistance. She was more than just one pick. But the moment the camera flashed, the press coverage, and the sponsors lined up, and that's when things got strange. The moment you saw the cracks before Caitlin ever took the court, the old guard players, media, and even executives jumped in to minimize it. But there's more than that. What will the league have in store for them when they arrive? Look, SVP, reality is coming. If Caitlin had simply arrived and flopped, even if she had been mediocre, the old guard would have had their moment. College is college, but the WNBA is a different animal. If you don't just walk in and take over the women who created this league, the media's focus would have changed, the hype would have subsided, and the old guard would have been vindicated. But that's not what happened. Her first game brought in the most viewed WNBA game in more than 20 years consistently draws 1 million people. That's when we witnessed the second stage of anger voting last season. When Clark hammered 3 Sky players coming over, here's Clark for 29 points, gets tripped up, there is good. Kennedy Carter now with 12 points off the bench. She played, the ratings skyrocketed. National broadcasts sold out. Jerseys flew off the shelves. And she wasn't just meeting the league, whether intentionally or unintentionally, began pushing back between the lines as players took liberties. Hard screens, off-ball hits, and unnecessary contact. What the referees did was pocket their whistles, which became a pattern that allowed her to get hit. It was evident that Caitlin's pull would not stop, no matter how many eye rolls or media criticisms she received. The next step was damage control. Frustrated, began to question whether she belonged and whether the hype would fade on its own. They attempted to physically put an end to it, and you could see it as she was worn out, bruised, and mentally spent from game after game, but Caitlin rose above it all. She didn't cry or fold. Instead, she became stronger and she returned from the Olympic break playing the best basketball of her life. We're talking MVP-level stuff that led the Fever. 2 victories, broke the assist record, and made her a first-team All-Star. After she demonstrated that the hype was genuine, we moved on to Stage 3 bargaining, where people attempt to make sense of the new reality by negotiating with others and themselves to try to explain everything in a way that allows them to maintain their lost status and pride control because, let's face it, many players, they lost their ego when Caitlin Clark took the league by storm, and all of a sudden the focus was on her rather than the veterans. What did they do? They altered the narrative, which is simply the way the media presents the race. Last night we read Time magazine, and Caitlin Clark was named the Athlete of the Year. Why couldn't they have featured the entire WNBA on that cover? The one thing I can't dispute is the amount of sense. She was a white girl from the middle of America. They knew better than to target Caitlin directly because that would backfire. Instead, they attacked the fans and blamed the media, claiming that Caitlin wasn't the cause of the fervor and energy that young girls were showing up to follow her little girls with their parents. Problem, everyone else was giving her preferential treatment. And her fans weren't true WNBA fans. The storyline said that if you liked Caitlin Clark, it must have been because of her skin tone, regardless of the fact that she led the league in assists as a rookie, drew record-breaking crowds, and attracted more spectators than ever before. However, none of that mattered because the narrative was that Caitlin is amazing. And I believe she will have a fantastic career in the WNBA. But there are other women who deserve to be covered before she came, and I will not be silenced when it comes to that. It's the classic propaganda playbook. Repeat the lie loud enough, shout it loud enough, and eventually people stop questioning it. Now we've got a piece of thief. The basketball community was expecting the Caitlin Clark effect to subside due to this narrative. They were mistaken. Veteran players began lining up to join the Indiana Fever one by one. These weren't players who were desperate for a job or simply content to be on the team. Rather, they were seasoned champions Dana Bonner, Natasha Howard, Sydney Colson, and women with options. There was a time not too long ago when media voices like Cheryl Swoops painted Indiana as a place no one wanted to go. Diana Taurasi even brought up the old rumors recently. But that narrative collapsed because Indy isn't just a destination. Women with rings, and they all wanted to play there because of Caitlin Clark. Not just because of the roster or the coach. Floodgates opened, and the Chicago Sky will host the Indiana Fever at the UC on Saturday, June 7th, and on Sunday, July 27th. The WNBA will play its first games at the United Center. Initially, the games were moved for her, not for league parity, not for playoff implications, and not for all-stars. For Caitlin Clark, teams that usually played in smaller gyms were abruptly then came the broadcast schedule of the Indiana Fevers. 44 regular season games. 41 will be nationally televised. This isn't just visibility that's saturated. The networks weren't hedging bets. They were placing all of their money on one player, betting that the Caitlin Clark show was worth prime-time billing. They had to book NBA arenas because the demand wasn't optional if Caitlin was coming to town. Then came the preseason games, which included one exhibition game that sold out a 15,000-seat arena. There were no playoff stakes or standings, just Caitlin and fans paying hundreds of dollars to watch her warm up. The average reported ticket price was $650, which, when you multiply 15,000 people by $650, is nearly $9. At that point, the Caitlin Clark effect couldn't be ignored. It wasn't hype or a marketing spin, but rather next-level math, money, and momentum. For many players, reality struck in a different way, and their own teams weren't supporting them. Instead, they were relying on Caitlin's promotions, which were linked to the Fever's visit. And ticket sales only increased when she was in town. Understood it. The sponsors understood it, and the fans undoubtedly understood it. Somewhere in the middle of the sold-out arenas, the marketing flurry and the change in league spirit, something began to settle in acceptance. And the players began to ask, yes, have we ever had teams have to get into larger arenas to play against a team? No, we haven't. So if we have more eyes on the game, and Caitlin Clark brings that, why would we feel some kind of why? Think we need to realize that when one player eats, we all eat. And as we all get more opportunities, it just makes things easier for everyone else. Caitlin Clark is a problem, bro. I think back to my rookie year and how I entered the league, and I think, dude, it was such a crazy transition for me to just understand what it's like to play. At the professional level, it's like this girl enters the game as a rookie and says, I broke the record for assists. I don't think people realize how crazy that is to do in your first year, but that's another episode. Kudos to Caitlin, bro. The plays she was making in spite of everything was crazy. But people were too focused on the high 20s and logo 3.3-point attempts per game, which I completely understand because it was a lot of fun to watch. But I always said that she might be among the best point guards in the WNBA's history. Has the coverage been flawless? Of course not. There are still snubs, double standards, and many voices that are more willing to criticize than to celebrate. But gradually, the tone has changed in the same media outlets. The players who initially questioned her every move are now showcasing her leadership, work ethic, and impact. Some of them are beginning to give her genuine credit, proving that she is not only good but also changing the game. This leads us to the moment that sealed Caitlin Clark's homecoming. When fans gathered outside Carver Hawkeye Arena to get ready and attend parties, everyone in Iowa City is eager to see Caitlin Clark, the state's favorite daughter, return home more than once. The fact that 3 million people watched the exhibition game on television wasn't simply due to the sold-out venue or the turnout. This was also the context and comparison. That number not only led the WNBA preseason, but also garnered more viewers than games from other professional leagues. From beyond the logo, with all eyes on her, Caitlin ran up court and made a three-pointer from behind the exact spot where she broke the NCAA scoring record. Despite the fact that only the people watching at home were aware that she was being watched, Caitlin didn't back down from the attention. Instead, she thrived on it. Caitlin knew exactly where she was, what it meant, and how to deliver a moment the audience would never forget. It wasn't just a shot. It was a statement, and the fans completely lost it because this was no longer just about basketball. It was about entertainment, storytelling theater, and a full-circle moment executed with perfect timing. I think one of the things I love most about Caitlin is there's a certain star quality and star power there. But it seems like it takes confidence and willingness to do what she knows everyone wants, like meet the moment and do the thing that she knows everyone wants. She knows what the people are like breaking the record. Say something like, oh no, I know what you want, come here, I'm going to give it to you. I thought it was fantastic, and I love it when athletes say things like, bring the cameras, right over here. It's a lot of fun, And she knows how to give fans what they want, even the Brazilian after the exhibition game. The national team couldn't help themselves. Instead of simply shaking hands and leaving the court, they surrounded Caitlin, grinning, laughing, and taking selfies as if they had just met Michael Jordan. In their eyes, she was clearly having her freaking Michael Jordan moment at that very moment. And the sold-out crowd was the one. We live in a world of sound bites and snapshots where perception is frequently louder than proof. And now the visual matched the reality. Everyone already knew the numbers. Everyone saw the broadcast schedule, the arena upgrades, the merch sales, the media buzz. But this time it was different. The illusion broke the illusion that anyone else's bread one was the subject of this. On ESPN 3 million people watched it. To put that into perspective, just between us, no NBA preseason game has attracted that many viewers in the previous 7 years. Just 2 NBA preseason games have done so in the previous 15 years. This preseason game draws more viewers than Game 1 of in the WNBA Finals last year. No MLB spring training game has ever been as close as the Yankees versus Phillies game, which drew 912,000 spectators 20 years ago. The game altered the favorite to win MVP since 3 million people saw Caitlin Clark. Should she win? I believe so. When you talk about Caitlin Clark, she averaged 19 points and 8 assists. And I love that you need to count aloud that she finished the season with 19 points and 8 assists. But she had an even better finish after the All-Star break. She averaged 12 assists during that time, and she now has more teammates to pass the ball to and more pieces around her. She also had a full offseason. It's a balance, but she's a generational talent, so it's never about one player in this instance. Caitlin brought tens of millions of new viewers to the W, and there's no doubting that impact, not just in the WNBA, but the sports world as a whole. Adam and I frequently discuss how she's the most well-known athlete in America. And media analysts are suddenly much more supportive of Caitlin Clark than they were only a few weeks prior. This is because of what transpired during the preseason, which resulted in sellouts. The narrative is already sort of waiting for her to produce so that they can start the offs. But when it all comes together, Caitlin Clark wasn't just riding the wave of fame she brought to every building. The ratings and the gravity she brought to every building were no longer up for debate. For example, this season, people are trying to make amends after being kind of weird the first year. Was working everyone while the majority of players eased into the offseason. Caitlin was juggling speaking engagements, high-profile appearances, NFL owner meetings, the Masters, still making it to the gym before 8 a.m. Not only is that discipline, but it's also iconic conduct right out of Kobe Bryant's playbook. I always get up the next morning with no excuses, no skipping, and no burnout. Whatever you want to call it. Caitlin Clark possesses what is known as Mamba mentality or Mama mentality. She is bigger, stronger, and ready to dominate. Her body is built for the pro grind. Her decision-making skills are sharper, and her confidence under the spotlight has only increased. She isn't just adjusting to the WNBA. Some haters are actively trying to stop her to advance the plot by complimenting Caitlin, while others accept the reality by remaining silent and then asking the grief of not being the star. This is what it really boils down to, and it affects each player differently. Some players express frustration, while others remain silent, and some, like Sophie Cunningham, have accepted it from the beginning. But regardless of how it appears, the moment has arrived and the evidence is everywhere. Overwhelming that Iowa preseason game wasn't just hype. It was the Caitlin Clark effect's resurgence. And it will be more significant than before. If you are still present, please drop off a trophy. The remarks for reading all the way through.